"Security, don't let her step inside my office again," Daniel said coldly, his voice steady but his eyes burning. The woman standing in front of him froze, her face went pale, her mouth slightly open. She wasn't just any woman. She was his ex-wife. The same woman who had divorced him, stolen $20 million from him, and married her secret lover just a year ago. And now, she had just been hired, at his company. Only she didn't know it was his. The air in the office turned heavy. She looked around nervously, clutching her folder. "Wait, Daniel, you work here," she stuttered. Daniel smiled slightly, not the warm smile she used to know, but a calm, controlled one that sent chills down her spine. "No," he said softly. "I own this place." That was the moment her world began to crumble. Just a year ago, Daniel wasn't this man. He wasn't powerful. He wasn't rich. He was just an ordinary husband, kind, humble, a man who worked hard and believed love could survive anything. If this is your first time watching our story, please subscribe, like, share and tell us where you are watching from in the comment section. Now, let's continue with the story. He had spent years building his small tech startup from scratch. He wasn't rich yet, but he had dreams, big ones. And his wife, Clara, she was the center of those dreams. He loved her deeply. He thought she loved him too. But Clara had other plans. When Daniel's father passed away, everything changed. His father had been the CEO of a large, powerful investment company, but Daniel never cared for that world. He wanted to make it on his own, so he didn't involve himself in his father's business. He didn't even know that, legally, the company was already his. His father had left everything to him, the entire company, its assets, and over $50 million in shares. But the papers were being processed quietly, and Daniel didn't find out right away. Clara, however, had been digging. She'd always been obsessed with status, the designer clothes, the fancy cars, the high life she saw on social media. And she hated that Daniel didn't make enough yet. One night, she told him she was tired of waiting. "Daniel," she said, arms crossed, "I can't live like this forever. You work all day and there's still nothing. Maybe I made a mistake marrying you." Daniel looked at her, confused and hurt. "Clara, I'm doing this for us. We just need more time." She cut him off. "No, you need more time. I need a life." That night was the beginning of the end. A few weeks later, Daniel came home early and found something he could never forget: Clara, with another man, in their bedroom. His heart shattered. But even then, he didn't yell. He didn't fight. He just left. Days later, Clara filed for divorce, coldly, without emotion. And when the settlement came through, Daniel discovered something even worse. She had drained their joint accounts over $20 million, money from his company's upcoming deal, the one he had worked years for. Gone. All of it. He was destroyed. His business collapsed. His name was ruined in the market. And within months, Clara was flaunting her new life, traveling the world, married to her lover, Ryan, a smooth-talking real estate developer. Daniel had nothing left, or so she thought. Because just 6 months later, a lawyer arrived at his door with a letter. It was from his late father's estate. And inside that envelope was his fate. Daniel had inherited everything: the company, the properties, and a controlling share in several major businesses, including one that was about to acquire a small real estate agency. That agency? It belonged to Ryan, Clara's new husband. And one of their newest hires? Clara herself. She had no idea that the company she just joined, the one she thought would be her new rise to wealth, was owned by the man she betrayed. So now, standing in front of her, Daniel looked calm. Almost peaceful. But behind that calmness, he had a plan, a quiet, devastating plan. He wasn't going to yell. He wasn't going to threaten. He was going to ruin them completely, one step at a time. And the first move had just begun. Clara sat in the break room, her hands shaking slightly as she stirred her coffee. It had been 3 days since that moment, the one where Daniel told her he owned the company. She hadn't slept much since. How could she? The man she betrayed, the man she stole $20 million from, was now her boss. And worse, He hadn't fired her. He hadn't said a word since. That silence scared her more than anything. She knew Daniel. Or at least, she thought she did. He had always been kind, soft-spoken, the kind of man who would rather lose than fight back. But the man she saw in that office wasn't the Daniel she remembered. He was different now, calm, confident, and terrifyingly powerful. Every step he took seemed calculated. Every word he said felt like it carried a hidden meaning. And the worst part, Ryan, her new husband, had no idea. He thought Daniel was just another executive. Relax, Ryan told her that night when she tried to explain. He's bluffing. He can't own this place. This company's worth billions. There's no way he runs it. But Clara wasn't so sure. She had seen the way people treated Daniel, the respect, the quiet nods, the fear in some of the manager's eyes. Something about him had changed. A week later, Daniel called for a company-wide meeting. The employees gathered in the large glass conference hall, including Clara and Ryan, who now worked in the same department. Daniel stood at the front, wearing a sleek black suit. His presence filled the room. "Good morning," he said, his tone steady and professional. "Today, I want to announce some major changes in leadership." Clara felt her heart stop. He began listing names, executives, directors, and then paused. "From today onward," Daniel continued, "the real estate division will undergo a complete audit. Every financial transaction, every investment, every contract will be reviewed." Clara's eyes darted toward Ryan. He looked tense. An audit? That could expose everything. Their company had been covering up messy deals for months. If someone looked close enough, they'd find it all, the fake reports, the secret accounts, the bribes. And if Daniel found out? She swallowed hard. Daniel looked directly at them for the first time that day. His gaze was cold, unreadable. "Transparency," he said slowly, "is the foundation of trust. I want to make sure this company is built on both." Then he smiled. A small, quiet smile that only she noticed. It wasn't friendly. It was a warning. Over the next few days, things began to unravel. The auditors worked day and night. Every file, every email, every bank statement was being checked. Ryan grew angry. He tried to pull strings, call contacts, anything to stop the audit, but it was useless. Daniel had locked everything down. And still, he said nothing to Clara. Not one word. But every time she saw him in the hallways, her chest tightened. She could feel the weight of his silence. It was like watching a storm build, slowly, quietly, but with power you couldn't escape. One evening, as Clara was about to leave the office, Daniel's assistant approached her. "Mr. Reeves wants to see you," she said. Her stomach dropped. She followed the assistant into his office, the same one she'd been banned from days ago. Daniel was standing by the window, watching the city lights. "Sit," he said without turning around. She obeyed quietly, her hands trembling. He spoke slowly. "Tell me, Clara, do you believe people can change?" Her throat went dry. I don't know," she whispered. He finally turned to face her. "Well, I do. And I think you're about to see how much." He walked closer, setting a file on the desk. Inside were printed pages, copies of transactions, messages, and contracts. All signed by Ryan. "Tell your husband," Daniel said softly, "the audit starts with him." Clara's face turned white. She wanted to speak, but her voice failed her. Daniel leaned forward slightly. "Oh, and Clara," he added, almost kindly. "This time, I won't lose everything. You will." Her hands shook as she left his office. She didn't know what scared her more, the evidence he had, or the quiet, ruthless man Daniel had become. And this was only the beginning. If you have come this far, please, like, subscribe and share this story to your loved ones to learn from it. The next few weeks turned into a nightmare for Clara and Ryan. The audit hit harder than anyone expected. Every hidden file, every shady transaction Ryan thought he buried deep was found. It turned out, Daniel's audit wasn't just a company check. It was a hunt. Every document led to another lie. Every number pointed to another secret. Ryan's department was drowning in reports and investigations. Employees whispered behind his back. Investors started asking questions. And then, the media got involved. Headlines spread fast. Fraud investigation in Reeves' global real estate division. Ryan was furious. He stormed into Daniel's office one morning, slamming the door behind him. "You think you can destroy me?" he shouted. "You don't scare me, Reeves." Daniel didn't even flinch. He calmly set down his pen and looked up. "I don't need to destroy you, Ryan," he said quietly. "You're doing a good job of that yourself." Ryan's face turned red with anger. "You think you can take my company?" Daniel leaned back in his chair. "It's not your company, Ryan. It's mine. You just worked here. And now, you're finished." There was no yelling, no threat, just calm truth. And somehow, that scared Ryan more than anything. He left the office shaking, realizing that the man he once mocked now owned everything he'd built. Clara watched her husband spiral. He barely slept, barely spoke. She tried to comfort him, but deep down, she knew Daniel wasn't stopping anytime soon. Every day she came to work felt like walking into a trap. People looked at her differently now, some with pity, some with judgment. And Daniel, he acted as if she didn't exist. He walked past her in the halls like she was invisible. It was like she had become a ghost in the empire she thought she'd taken from him. One night, Clara sat alone in her car in the parking lot, tears streaming down her face. For the first time in a long time, she felt truly helpless. She remembered the day she left Daniel, the look on his face, the quiet heartbreak in his eyes. She thought he was weak then. But now, she realized he had been strong in ways she could never understand. Because he didn't seek revenge through anger. He used power, calm, silent, and final. A week later, everything collapsed. Ryan was fired. The audit uncovered enough evidence to charge him with fraud and embezzlement. The investors cut ties. The board voted him out. The man who had once boasted about being unstoppable was now facing court and bankruptcy. And Clara? She lost everything too. Her accounts were frozen, her reputation destroyed. No one wanted to hire her. The world she built on lies and luxury came crashing down faster than she could blink. She tried to meet Daniel one last time to beg, to explain, maybe even to apologize. But when she showed up at his office, his assistant stopped her at the door. "Mr. Reeves isn't available," she said. Clara's eyes filled with tears. "Please, I just need 5 minutes. Tell him I'm sorry. Tell him." The assistant interrupted gently. "He said if you ever came here again, I should give you this." She handed Clara a white envelope. Clara opened it slowly. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a check. It was made out to her. The amount, $20 million. The same amount she had stolen from him. And at the bottom, in Daniel's neat handwriting, were 3 words. Paid in full. Her knees gave out. She dropped to the floor, the paper shaking in her hands. He wasn't just ending her story. He was erasing it completely. That night, Daniel stood by his office window, watching the city lights flicker below. For the first time in years, he felt peace, not joy, not triumph, just calm. He hadn't shouted. He hadn't begged. He'd simply shown them what power looked like in silence. And though the world thought it was over, Daniel knew something else. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of the truth. Because behind Clara's betrayal, there were secrets he hadn't uncovered yet, secrets buried deep in his father's company. And soon, he'd find them. Daniel thought it was finally over. Clara was gone. Ryan was ruined. The pain he'd carried for years had turned into something cold, steady victory. But deep down, something didn't sit right. The audit had revealed everything Ryan had done, but there were still strange gaps, missing documents, hidden bank accounts that didn't trace back to him. Someone else had been pulling strings behind the scenes. And that someone had been part of his father's company, long before Daniel inherited it. One evening, while reviewing old files, Daniel noticed something odd. A name, buried deep inside company records. Clara's mother. His eyebrows furrowed. Her name was listed as a consultant for his father's company 20 years ago. He dug deeper. Payments, transfers, contracts, all pointing to her. And then, one document froze him completely. A trust fund agreement, signed by his father, naming Clara's mother as a beneficiary. Daniel leaned back in his chair, the air leaving his lungs. Could it be? He flipped through the pages, his hands shaking. His father and Clara's mother hadn't just worked together, they had a relationship. And according to the timeline, it had started before Daniel was even born. The next morning, Daniel called his lawyer. "I need everything," he said. "Every record connected to my father and Evelyn Hale." Hours later, the truth arrived and it hit like a punch to the chest. His father had secretly supported Clara's family for years. When Daniel and Clara met years ago at a networking event, it hadn't been by accident. It had been arranged quietly, subtly by people who knew both families. Clara had known who he was all along. Her marriage hadn't been about love. It had been about access to the Reeves fortune her mother believed she deserved. But along the way, something went wrong. Clara's mother had passed away, leaving debts and pressure. Clara got desperate. She'd fallen into Ryan's arms thinking she could steal what her mother had once been promised. And now, Daniel realized, the betrayal hadn't started with Clara. It had started decades before with his father's secrets. That night, Daniel met Clara for the last time. He found her sitting on a park bench, her eyes red, clutching the check he'd given her. When she saw him, she stood quickly. "Daniel, please." He held up his hand. "No more lies," he said. She froze. He stepped closer. "You knew my father, didn't you? Or at least, your mother did." Her eyes filled with tears. "Yes," she whispered. "He helped us. My mother always said she loved him once, before he married your mom. She said he promised to take care of us, but, when he didn't, she lost everything. I just wanted to fix what she couldn't." Daniel stared at her, silent. All the anger, the hate, the years of pain, it all faded into something else. Not forgiveness. Just understanding. "So you destroyed me," he said quietly, "to fix your mother's mistakes." She nodded, crying harder. "I didn't mean to. I didn't know it would go this far. I just wanted to survive." Daniel looked away. The city lights reflected in his eyes. "You could have told me the truth," he said. "You didn't have to break me." "I was scared," she whispered. "And I was stupid." He turned to leave, but before walking away, he said one last thing. "Clara, I hope someday you realize, revenge never rebuilds anything. It only burns what's left." Then he walked away, leaving her standing alone under the cold night sky. Weeks later, Daniel stepped down as CEO. He donated part of his inheritance to charity, rebuilt his startup, and started again, this time on his own terms. The company thrived, not because of power, but because of peace. And though he never saw Clara again, he often thought about that night. How sometimes the people who hurt us the most are broken too. If you were Daniel, would you have taken revenge or walked away? Would you forgive someone who stole your future, just because they were broken too? Tell me in the comments. Do you believe people can truly change after betrayal? And what would you have done if your ex ended up working for the company you owned? Drop your thoughts below. Your opinion might just start the next story. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more real-life drama stories that make you ask one question. What would you do if it happened to you?